All right, top congressional Democrats are calling for a federal investigation after a whistleblower complaint claimed immigrants held at a detention center in Georgia are undergoing controversial hysterectomies. The legislators are demanding the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General look into what they call a, quote, staggering abuse of human rights. The complaint filed by a nurse at the Irwin County Detention Center also alleges a lack of medical care and unsafe work practices that facilitated the spread of COVID-19. Another important story, and we've got CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez following it for us and digging deep behind those headlines. So, Camilo, what do we know about this whistleblower complaint and the overall conditions inside this Georgia detention facility, which ICE detainees have reportedly undergone unwanted gynecological procedures? I mean, it sounds like something out of the 19th century.
Yes, good morning, Vlad and Anne-Marie. Earlier this week, for context, a whistleblower complaint alleging poor conditions inside a Georgia ICE detention center operated by a private prison company was filed with the DHS Inspector General and the Department Office for Civil Liberties and Civil Rights. And so this complaint was filed earlier this week, and it includes accounts from a nurse, as you mentioned, who used to work at this facility, the Irwin Detention Center in southeastern Georgia, and it includes also accounts from immigrants who were held or continue to be held at this detention facility. And one of the allegations in this report is that the nurse says several detained women came up to her to express their concern about a number of unwanted hysterectomies. CBS News has not confirmed these allegations, which are now being investigated by DHS. But we did speak to a lawyer, Vlad and Anne-Marie, for a Cameroonian 30-year-old woman who is still in ICE detention, who alleges that she had an unwanted medical procedure while in ICE detention. According to her lawyer, Pauline Binham, who came to the U.S. When she was 2 and does not have legal status, experienced irregular menstrual cycles 2 years into her detention by ICE, and was referred to undergo a so-called D and C procedure to clean the lining of her uterus. But unbeknownst to her, during that medical procedure in which she was not aware of, the doctor also removed one of her fallopian tubes. According to her attorney, when she learned of this, Pauline Binham was visibly frustrated and started crying because of the implications of that procedure on her ability to have a child. Pauline was actually set to be deported on Wednesday, Anne-Marie and Vlad, but her deportation was halted. Advocates say is because they mounted a advocacy campaign in which members of Congress called ICE to halt this deportation, but ICE tells us that it was because the airline that she was supposed to have a flight on did not allow her to board a plane for unknown reasons. So we still don't know how widespread this problem is, but we do have this allegation from this one attorney whom we spoke to, Vlad and Anne-Marie.
All right. Camilo, these allegations are extreme, they are disturbing, and they're being investigated. But there's a long road between, to get to that point where we're talking about unwanted medical procedures. How do these allegations fit into the broader concerns that advocates have about the conditions that some of these individuals are enduring at detention centers?
That's a very critical question, Anne-Marie, because in addition to the allegation about the unwanted hysterectomies, which of course are really shocking and really garnered all the headlines, the complaint also alleges medical neglect and poor measures to protect detainees from the coronavirus. So those are concerns that advocates have had well beyond the filing of this whistleblower complaint. For example, this has been the deadliest year in ICE detention since 2006. 19 ICE detainees have died in detention this fiscal year, including 6 who reportedly died from coronavirus complications. And so this has been an issue for advocates for a long time. Advocates say that most of the people in ICE detention do not have to be detained because, and we have discussed this several times before, ICE detention is a civil matter. Even people who have some type of criminal conviction are being held in ICE custody because the government wants to deport them, not because they're serving a time for their crimes. They have already done so. And so they believe that ICE detention is unnecessary and that it leads to some of the concerns that are now coming to light.
Camilo, can I just ask you, in reporting this out, did you find that there were certain groups of people from certain countries that were targeted more than others for these procedures, or was it an across-the-board thing, or was it just random?
We did not find that there were specific nationalities or ethnicities targeted by these procedures that are alleged in this complaint. But, you know, we do have to acknowledge something that is stressed by advocates, which is that a big chunk of the people in ICE detention tend to be people of color, people from African countries, from Latin America, from Southeast Asia, who either cross the border without documents, who are asylum seekers. You have green card holders in ICE detention who were placed there after being convicted of a crime, because you can still be deported even if you are a legal permanent resident. If you come in certain contact with the criminal justice system. So that is something that is a concern among advocates, the disproportionate impact of detention on minority communities and people of color, but we have no details as to whether specific groups were targeted.
Yeah, and we should reinforce that this is a whistleblower complaint and these are accusations that are being investigated. But I'm sure ICE is responding. I'm sure they're responding about the complaint, but also the person who issued the complaint.
Sure, yes. So ICE put out a statement by its top doctor earlier in the week. She said that there have been only 2 referrals for hysterectomies at this detention center in Georgia since 2018. We have no data on other types of medical procedures or hysterectomies that weren't referred but actually occurred. ICE has not responded to those inquiries. And DHS, as we said, is now investigating these allegations. The Inspector General is launching an investigation. And the second in command at DHS, Ken Cuccinelli, told the National Review earlier this week that he has asked the Inspector General to expedite its probe and that he has also tasked a separate team of DHS investigators to go to this facility and to try to either verify these claims or cast doubt on some of the allegations.
Let me also ask you, Camilo, about a decision from a federal appeals court earlier this week, which allowed the Trump administration to move forward with plans to end temporary protected status for several countries. What does this mean for the hundreds of thousands of immigrants under these protections?
Right. This is a very important ruling by the Ninth Circuit, Anne-Marie and Vlad. The court is now allowing the Trump administration to end temporary protected status for about 300,000 immigrants from El Salvador, Haiti, Sudan, and Nicaragua, as well as immigrants from Nepal and Honduras who have had this protection from deportation for years now, and even for more than a decade in some cases. And that protection allows them to work and live in the U.S. temporarily. It does not allow them to become U.S. citizens or green card holders, but it gives them some certain certainty in order to live here in the U.S. The court said it has no jurisdiction to second guess the administration's move to end these temporary protections, which are designed to avoid deporting people to places plagued by war and natural disasters, which was the case for Haiti in the wake of the 2010 earthquake, Vlad. And but the administration said that these conditions have improved and that these people can return home. But although this is a disappointing loss for immigrant advocates, I think the fate of these people will hinge on the election in November because, for example, the first immigrants that will have their protections expire will have their protections expire in March of 2021. And so that will be after the election, of course, and Vice President Joe Biden has pledged to not deport any TPS recipient to unsafe countries.
All right, Camilo, thank you very much.